Oh man, there's a lot to unpackage with this movie. I don't even know where to start. There's just so much that happens in it. So many characters, scenes, reveals, Easter eggs, tie-ins, and they all offer something to talk about. So, yeah, I'll try my best to keep this review straightforward and not get off track. So, I'm going to be dividing this thing up into little groups. I'll be covering the story, the characters, the music, all that stuff. Let's get started. And no, spoiler warning: if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. A lot of the stuff in a lot of the stuff in this review just kind of requires you to know what happens in the story. And speaking of the story is pretty good, although it's very convoluted. Like I said, there's so much that needed to be included in the story. I don't really think it was possible for the writers to be able to include everything and make it all flow seamlessly. First act, especially, is where it works the least. The pacing is all off. Things happen so fast with no explanation to them. I had the same problem with the movie The Adventures of Tintin, although with this movie, the pacing eventually does get better. Anyway, this movie doesn't follow the tradition of showing the character's backstory and how she became who she is at the beginning. In fact, the movie starts in the middle of that process of her becoming who she is. Everything before that is told through flashbacks. The flashbacks don't cohere to the overall story as much as they could, but after the first act, it's fine. Up until the part where she's abducted by the Skrulls and they need to go through her memories, we have no idea what the heck is going on. I'm honestly not sure how I can talk about the plot in a straightforward way when the plot is not straightforward. So anyway, the story finally picks up pace when she crashes on Earth, and from there on, it goes pretty smoothly, while still not being straightforward. And I like when a movie can do that, and this one comes so close to doing it perfectly. And as for the dialogue, it's mostly okay. Nothing groundbreaking or anything, and it serves its purpose. However, this movie does set itself up, or it tries to set itself up, as a comedy movie, and it fails miserably. There were a lot of lame jokes sprinkled throughout the movie, and everyone else in the theater was laughing at them. And I was sitting there thinking, that's not funny. Alright, so now we got the characters. There are a lot of characters to talk about, so I'll be talking about each one in order of importance. The first one is this black woman whose name I don't know, and there's not much to say about her, to be honest. She and her daughter are just there to support Carol. Next is Ronan the Accuser. I was hoping he'd be in this a little more. It was still nice to see him there as a tie-in, and it doesn't really mess with anything continuity-wise. He works as a character with or without having seen Guardians of the Galaxy and knowing who he is. Then there's this guy, Korath, who is also in Guardians of the Galaxy, and is still and he's in this movie not much more than Ronan is, but it's still nice to see him. And then there's Coulson. Again, he's not in it as much as he could be, but still, it's still great to see him on the screen for the first time in 7 years. And the last of the minor characters is Annette Bening. When you see her for the first time in the movie, you think, why is Annette Bening in a Marvel movie? I don't know, but she, I guess she serves as a good former mentor character, if that's a thing. And now for the major characters, the first one, of course, best character in the whole movie, it's Goose the cat, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kidding, of course. Goose is probably one of the few actual funny things in this movie, and I knew that something was up with him. Although I knew he couldn't be a Skrull, so I wasn't sure what would be up with him. And when he finally revealed what he was, I didn't react. I was like, oh, cool. The next is Nick Fury, who actually is the best character and the best rendition of Nick Fury in the MCU to date. It's nice to see a well-known, well-loved character in a different light. Unfortunately, this is probably the last time we'll ever see him this way, and that's a real shame. Samuel L. Jackson's chemistry with Brie Larson is surprisingly really good. Both make up for everything the other is not. And that's a really deep sentence. So then next is both Jude Law and the Kree people and Ben Mendelsohn and the Skrulls. They kind of go together. In just about every single iteration of the Kree-Skrull War, both sides are depicted as the bad guys, with the Avengers being the good guys fighting against them both. However, the Avengers don't exist yet when this film takes place, so instead they make Captain Marvel a Kree and the Skrulls are the bad guys, and that sounded reasonable. The Skrulls are great villains. Then comes the big twist. The Kree are the villains. The Skrulls are good. I don't think anyone expected that, and it was a nice twist. We don't really have a whole lot of those in the MCU. The only problem I have with this is that if the Skrulls are good, we can't really have that one of the Avengers is a Skrull twist in Endgame. I still think they'll do some kind of secret invasion thing in the future, but it'll be a while to then, and we'll have to wait and find out. So yeah, no Skrulls in Endgame. And then comes the big one. Captain Marvel herself. Now look, I don't like Brie Larson as a person. I think she's a pretty good actress, and I don't let any personal feelings I have let me think more or less of a character and their performance. Her performance isn't bad. The first trailer didn't show her emoting that much, and she doesn't emote much during the first act when she's Veers. Since she'd been become a Kree warrior, she'd been taught to suppress her emotions, and that's why she doesn't show them. And after she finally discovers her past, she becomes a little no, she becomes more of an affable character. Another problem people had with this going into this film was about it being feminist propaganda and just pushing some kind of agenda. This problem wasn't helped by the fact that Brie Larson was using the film's publicity for her own feminist propaganda, which is not a good thing to do. But just because one person who worked on the movie treats it like that doesn't mean it is. And yes, there are scenes of her kicking the crap out of people, and most of them being guys. The question is, how's that a problem here? Characters like Wonder Woman, Black Widow, and the Wasp do the exact same thing. Heck, there are a lot of male characters that do that. And yeah, it's not a problem. It's what you'd expect. A superhero movie is going to have the main character kicking the butts of the villain's henchmen, and those henchmen are usually guys. And it's not like sexist if it's a woman doing it. So yeah, Captain Marvel isn't a feminist movie, and it doesn't set her up as a strong female leader. It sets her up as a strong leader, and I honestly think she can serve as a good role model to young girls. As for the music, yeah, the music isn't anything special. The only piece of music I actually remember is at the end, when Nick Fury is writing the Avengers Initiative and the Avengers theme plays. I mean, just listen to this. Yeah, the only movies in the MCU that really have memorable music are the three Avengers films. And lastly is the MCU tie-ins. This movie has a lot of great tie-ins to the MCU. I absolutely love stuff like that. And as much as I enjoyed Aquaman, there were no tie-ins to the DCEU besides one little reference. Captain Marvel is full of less than subtle references and tie-ins to the MCU. I already covered the appearances of characters like Nick Fury, Coulson, and Ronan. One of my favorite things about the movie is how they were able to incorporate the Tesseract into it. Although it does bring up the question of how it was found, because it crashed when Captain America crashed. What I didn't like was how Nick Fury lost his eye. The last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. I suppose he did trust the cat not to scratch his eye out, maybe. I personally think it was a reference to when he had the fake Coulson in the car with him, and they crashed, and his eye was injured throughout the movie, and then Goose just delivered the final blow. And that was probably what they were going for, but it doesn't really measure up to how it could have happened. And of course, there was that amazing post-credit scene with Cap, Black Widow, Bruce Banner, and Rhodey. It's probably actually just a scene from Endgame, but it's still nice to see. I mean, yeah, we haven't really heard from these characters in a year, and it's great to see them. And there's one last thing I need to talk about, and it's about Stan Lee. Now, I love the Marvel Studios logo sequence. The only thing that would make it better would be if they played the Avengers theme over it instead of the Thor the Dark World theme. Anyway, for Captain Marvel, they used the logo sequence to pay tribute to Stan Lee and making him the subject of all the scenes shown during the sequence. And it was a nice gesture, but I don't think that's the best way they could have done it. And I'm okay with it. And I do think that Stan Lee deserves all the respect he can get. I just hope that they don't show it that way for Endgame. It wouldn't really fit the mood, you know what I mean? I thought the way they did the logo for Infinity War was absolutely brilliant. If they showed images and videos of Stan Lee over bleak, desolate music, it wouldn't work. Instead, I think they should dedicate Endgame to Stan Lee. Because Endgame truly will be a big culmination of his work. Captain Marvel isn't a culmination as much. So yeah, my overall thoughts. I liked it. It's a good movie. It certainly earns its stripes among the other films of the MCU. Of course, it doesn't match films like Infinity War, Civil War, Avengers, Ragnarok, Homecoming, movies like that, but it's nice. I'd say it's in my top 10 favorites. Yeah, be sure to say in the comments what you think about the movie, and yeah, tell me if you agree or disagree with any of my opinions.